So, Marvel and DC been making some pretty controversial decisions lately. I won't go into the Marvel one because we don't really know all the details. It remains to be seen how well they handle this, because it could work. But for DC, the big topic of discussion is their decision to integrate Watchmen into the main DC universe, with the suggestion that Dr. Manhattan created either the main DC universe or the current one or just a DC universe. A lot of people are up in arms about this. People generally have kind of always hated the way DC has handled Watchmen, particularly in regards to Alan Moore's rights as the creator. I'm not going to sit here and defend DC. Generally, in cases like this, I tend to side with the creator. But I actually don't think this is necessarily all that bad an idea, partly because I was never all that attached to Watchmen to begin with. I need to get that out of the way straight away. I've seen the movie, it's alright. I don't really have any desire to revisit it. I don't have a desire to read the comic version either. I know the basic gist of both versions, and I don't really get it. So with that in mind, you might automatically discount my opinion, but I do think that there is some potential with this idea. Just from a storytelling standpoint, the idea of Dr. Manhattan basically creating a new universe or rewriting the current one following the events of Watchmen, trying to make a better world where heroes aren't turning against each other and people aren't getting constantly murdered. The idea of him trying to create a brighter world closer to what we see in, say, the Gold and Silver Age of DC. It makes sense. You can certainly see where that idea might come from. So the idea of a DC universe that Dr. Manhattan creates, it makes sense story-wise is what I'm saying. Is it necessarily the best way to go with these characters? Maybe not, but it's certainly something that makes sense. Imagine they take it in this direction. Dr. Manhattan creates a new universe in which DC's Golden Age heroes, the Justice Society, they still existed during World War II, so they were the 40s era heroes. The original Watchmen team were the next generation, and then the Watchmen team that the story focuses on are the third generation, maybe a fourth generation before the current era of heroes with Superman and Batman and stuff. And so the current generation of heroes, possibly including legacy versions of Rorschach or Night Owl, they kind of have to learn from all the previous generations. They have to learn from the bright and colourful Golden Age and the Watchmen's dark and gritty age to try and find that right perfect balance of optimism versus realism. So they have to try and find that perfect balance based on the actions of those who came before. I think there is potential with an idea like that. I imagine what's most likely going to happen though is that the Watchmen characters are going to be transposed into the modern DC universe. I mean, that does seem the most likely way they're going to do it. They can probably get more out of it that way. But I don't know, I feel like another way they could go about it is just create another Watchmen universe in which the ending plays out differently. Maybe it's a version where once the heroes find out the big scheme, that they all instead work together to create a better outcome. And that leads into a brighter universe. Not too bright, but a bit less grim. So it still carries most of the same tone, it's just they don't need to go through the big evil scheme at the end of the story, you know? Now, I'm not saying that DC is necessarily right for doing this. I'm not saying that they're going to do it well. Given the way DC has handled pretty much everything in recent years, they're most likely going to fuck it up royally. Let's not mince words. This is DC we're talking about. The company that feels the need to reboot their universe every 4 fucking years and who put Zack Snyder in charge of their movie universe. A guy who I believe was quoted as saying he's only interested in superheroes if they're killing people and fucking. Basically the worst person to put in charge of it. DC are the current kings of fucking things up, so they're gonna fuck this up royally. But there is potential here. I do think that we should give DC the benefit of the doubt. See where things go. Same with this whole Captain America issue with Marvel. We don't know all the details. It's probably going to be fucked up, not as much as what's going to happen with Watchmen, but I do think we should give them the benefit of the doubt. We should still let them know that they're on thin ice with this, that they have to handle this perfectly, or the fans will not be happy. Let them know your opinions. Give them a chance to either impress or disappoint you. Try and find that balance between being patient and outraged. I wonder if perhaps the reason they're doing this is not just to make more money off Watchmen, but also to bolster their potential future with the movies. Because you look at a lot of the decisions Marvel have been making, like the idea of replacing Steve Rogers, and replacing Bruce Banner, and replacing Thor, and the decision to have Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch find out that Magneto is not their father. Clearly this is all in benefit to the movies, so that when these decisions get incorporated into the movies, people will look at it and say, well, it happened in the comics, so it's okay, and not just some random out of nowhere thing that's not true to the comics. So I wonder if perhaps the intention is to introduce the Watchmen into the main DC universe, so that when they go forward, maybe after the Justice League film, they can then do another Watchmen movie that's part of the DC extended universe. Maybe that's not what they're going for. Maybe it's all just in service to the comics or just to make money from new Watchmen comics, but I can't help but feel like that's what they're going for. We'll just have to wait and see.